Hey everyone, welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into something totally fascinating. It's a core theme about human nature, perception, and a massive cognitive blind spot that, honestly, pretty much all of us share. Let me ask you something. Have you ever actually stopped to think about who we give credit to when things go right in our lives? Right? It sounds like a super simple question, but the way our brains process gratitude and attribute success is actually incredibly complex. We're going to unpack a specific psychological fallacy today that dictates how we view the whole world, how we interact with our peers, and even how we understand the environment around us. By the end of this explainer, you might just start looking at the chain of events in your own life in a completely different way. So, to get started, I want you to picture just a totally normal, everyday office scenario. Imagine a massive, high-stakes project you've been sweating over for months has finally crossed the finish line. It's a total success. There's a celebration in the meeting room, people are clapping, maybe someone brought in some cake. You know the drill. In that exact moment of relief and joy, when your project succeeds, who do you actually think? Naturally, you probably turn to the person standing right next to you, right? Like the colleague who handed you the final report, or the manager who directly approved your time off. But I really want you to consider this for a second. Are you just naturally thinking the nearest person instead of the real decision maker? Are we basically programmed to just look at the person directly in front of us, rather than looking up the chain to the person who truly made the whole thing possible in the first place? Okay, let's dive into this. Here is the absolute crux of the problem. Credit often reaches only one chain link. In that office celebration we just talked about, the colleague you thanked is absolutely a link in the chain of success, no doubt about it. But they are usually just the final link. The reality is, we rarely consider who made the real decision. The true source might actually be a director 3 levels up who fought to secure the funding, or maybe an executive who quietly greenlit the strategy months ago. Our gratitude, our recognition of success, it typically travels backwards until it hits the very first thing it can see, and then it just stops right there. We completely miss the rest of the invisible chain of command and the decisions that actually brought that outcome to life. Section 1. Proximate cause attribution bias. So that relatable office scenario, it isn't just a quirky part of workplace culture. It's actually a deeply ingrained psychological behavior. And it turns out there's a scientific name for this whole shebang. It's called proximate cause attribution. This is a very well-recognized concept in attribution theory within social psychology. Basically, it's defined as the mistake of taking the nearest visible cause and believing it to be the true source of an outcome. The word proximate simply means closest in relationship or immediate proximity. So when a good thing happens, our brain automatically goes hunting for the proximate cause, the nearest thing we can physically see. And boom, we assign all the credit right there. We confuse the proximate cause, which is just the immediate trigger, with the ultimate cause, which is the true original source of the event. It's a fascinating mental shortcut, but it leaves us with a totally skewed view of reality. To really cement this, let's walk through this decision chain visually. Think about 3 steps here. Step 1 is the true source, right? The actual decision maker. Step 2 is the nearest visible link, so the person or thing carrying out the action. And step 3 is the outcome, the successful project, the good news, whatever it is. Now, logically, our recognition is supposed to trace back from step 3 all the way back to step 1. But enthusiastically and almost without fail, our brains get completely stuck at step 2. We see the outcome, we look at the nearest visible link, and we say, hey, thank you, step 2. We are literally blinded to step 1. We just do not naturally look past the nearest visible cause. It's wild. Section 2. The corporal and the ting. All right, now that we understand the mechanics of this cognitive bias, let's shift the scale of it. Let's move away from the corporate office environment and look at a classic military analogy provided in our source material. This is a fantastic quote from a great commentator that just perfectly captures the essence of proximate cause attribution. It goes like this. A soldier attributes all kindness to his corporal, forgetting the king. Think about a soldier down in the trenches. When a warm meal suddenly arrives or a leave of absence is granted, who does that soldier think? Well, the corporal's standing right in front of him handing over the rations or the paperwork, right? The soldier pours all of his gratitude onto the corporal. But we really have to remember, the corporal is simply the king's officer. He is merely carrying out the orders dictated from far, far above. The corporal doesn't own those rations. He didn't decree the leave. The king did. But the king is totally invisible to the soldier on the ground. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the direct contrast set up here. On one side, we have the visible cause, the corporal. This is the immediate link we interact with, the one we can physically see, speak to, and shake hands with. On the other side, we have the true source, the king. This is the actual originator of the outcome, the one whose overarching authority makes the kindness possible in the first place. But it's someone we never actually see. The bias happens because our brains heavily favor the visible over the invisible. We constantly mistake the delivery mechanism for the creator. Let's move to section 3 and see how this builds. Nature's true source. So this concept doesn't just apply to human hierarchies like the military or the workplace. If we dramatically zoom out from that military analogy to the grand scale of the natural world, we'll see that our brains pull the exact same trick on us when we look at the environment. We fall into the exact same fallacy with natural causes. This attribution bias totally blinds us when we look at the natural elements around us. When we witness incredible outcomes in nature, like a blooming flower, a bountiful harvest, or just a really beautiful spring day, our brains immediately start searching for the proximate cause. We look for the nearest visible link in the chain of nature to give our credit to, and we completely forget to look for the ultimate source that actually set those natural laws into motion. Compare the nearest cause, which would be things like the sun and the rain, with the true source, which is an underlying order. Think about it. When a farmer sees a great crop, they are incredibly thankful for the sun and the rain. Now, the crucial point here is that thinking the nearest cause, like the sun and rain, isn't wrong, not at all. The sun and rain are absolutely necessary links in the chain of that crop's success. But it leaves a fundamentally incomplete picture. Why? Because the sun and the rain don't just decide to operate on their own. They are themselves bound to a higher underlying order. They are following a complex system. Giving all the credit to the rain is exactly like the soldier giving all the credit to the corporal. Section 4. Tracing the chain. Wow, we've covered a lot of ground today, looking at this fallacy from a bunch of different angles. We've seen it in the office, we've seen it in the military, and we've even seen it on the grand scale of nature itself. Let's summarize our key takeaways to make sure this really sticks and bring all these scales back to our central motif, that invisible chain of credit. First, we have a very natural tendency to mistakenly thank the nearest person for a success, completely ignoring the larger chain of decisions. Second, social psychology formally calls this proximate cause attribution bias, our habit of mistaking the near for the true. Third, we saw this beautifully illustrated. A soldier thanks the corporal standing right in front of him, entirely forgetting the invisible king who actually gave the order. And finally, this extends to everything, even the natural world. Thanking the sun and rain isn't wrong, but it totally ignores the fundamental underlying order that they are bound to. In every single scenario, our credit consistently gets stuck at the proximate cause, rather than following the chain all the way back to the ultimate cause. I want to leave you with this final, really stark thought directly from our source material. It is so easy, almost automatic, to just look at the nearest link in the chain and give it all the credit. I mean, it requires zero cognitive effort. But if we want to truly understand how our projects succeed, how systems work, and how the world around us operates, we have to fight that bias. We have to ask the harder question. Look at the successes in your own life right now. You know the nearest links, but where does the chain actually begin? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking questions, keep looking past the visible, and I'll catch you next time.